Coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, it's Thursday, baby. You know what that means. Crossover Thursday. All things Packers, all things Raiders. Coming up on Thursday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, October 5th, 2023.
Just win. Just win. Just win. Just win.
The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won. And won. And won. And won. And won.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. To get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available, of course, as always, if you're checking us out on YouTube, 3 minutes or 33 minutes, we appreciate you in a major way. Showing is blowing up in a major way. Again, over 9,000 subscribers. We definitely appreciate you. We also appreciate my man Ari. Every single day, he does a great job making sure we're up on YouTube, we're looking good, and we're sounding good. On Twitter, at Ari Produces. You can always hit me up on Twitter as well, at your boy Q254, and the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line is 707-654-4693. No calls or texts coming up in today's show. It is the crossover edition. That means myself and Peter Bukowski, host of Locked On Packers, are going to talk all things Packers and Raiders for all three segments of the show. We're going to talk about the biggest storylines. We're going to talk about the biggest matchups, and of course, the path to victory for each team. So Peter Bukowski joins the show. Very excited about that, and always excited about the crossover edition. I know it's a lot of people's favorite show of the weekend. Of course, that just means that you're getting closer and closer to another game. Week 5 action, Monday Night Football, prime time. Before we get into it, though, I do want to tell you today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, crossover edition, is being brought to you by PrizePicks. The easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL for our first deposit match up to $100. And normally I have some news and notes before we get into the crossover edition, but since the work week has been pushed back an extra day due to Monday Night Football, there's been no practice. We'll be out at practice today. We'll be out at the Intermountain Health Performance Center. We'll get to talk to Coach McDaniels this morning around 10 o'clock. So depending on what time you're listening to this, we may be getting ready to talk to him, or we might have already talked to him. But no real news and notes to get into. We'll have some more, obviously, coming up on tomorrow's edition, the Friday edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Part 1 of the crossover edition. Peter Bukowski, really good dude, host of Locked On Packers. Always appreciate anytime I get a chance to catch up with him, whether it's the crossover edition or just chopping it up with him, because, again, he's a hell of a dude. Appreciate him and his efforts each and every time he joins the show. And here's part 1 of our conversation. Starts off with me asking Peter about the biggest storyline for the Packers heading into Monday Night Football.
I think until further notice, the biggest storyline in almost any game is going to be Jordan Love. How does he look? He's had some primetime opportunities now, some big game opportunities. Now on the road, hostile environment, the black hole, all that stuff. I know it's not the original one, but it's the new version. It's the chat bot version of it. We gotta bring in
version. It's the upgraded version, less intimidating.
And so that is good. And I think the other part of this, Q, that the reason that it's Jordan Love is it's just not a very good defense. And so you want to these young players, you want to show out against the defense that has not played well to date. Chandler Jones, what's going on there is frankly a sad story, but he's a good player. Right. Not having him, that's a big deal. So I think for me, it's Jordan Love until further notice. And I have a feeling it's a somewhat similar thing for different reasons for the Raiders in terms of what's going on with their quarterback position right now.
Right. Well, Jimmy G, he's a guy that didn't play last week because of the concussion. So Aiden O'Connell got the start. He's a 4th-round pick out of Purdue. And according to Josh McDaniels, Jimmy G will be the guy under center as long as he clears concussion protocol. But again, you got to clear concussion protocol. Aiden O'Connell got better throughout the course of the game last week against the Chargers, but it just wasn't enough. He looked like a rookie at times. It looked like a guy that was feeling pretty comfortable at times, and ultimately threw an interception at the end of the game to seal the deal for the Chargers. But, it's a fine line. Do you play the rookie? Do you see what you have in him? Or do you still try to go win a bunch of games because, look, it's still early in the season and anything could happen? So going in at 1-3, you're not out of it by any stretch. But a lot of Raider Nation, Peter, to be honest, is kind of already done with the season. It's like, hey, let's just see what we got in the rookie and then maybe have to dip back into the draft and go get another quarterback next year. I'm not set up in that in that in that mindset right now. Matter of fact, I thought that it probably was too early to have Aiden O'Connell play last week. I thought it probably should be the Brian Hoyer show for at least one game and just call it a day, right? I mean, but I think if you get the rookie in, then let him play. Let him play 4 or 5 games, to see what he's got. But I thought it was a little early. But look, hey, I'm not the coach. So, they went with O'Connell, and now they're going to go with Jimmy G if he's healthy. So, yeah, man, it's a weird feel to this second year under head coach Josh McDaniels. I really still don't understand what the method to the madness is, what they're trying to get accomplished. But, with Jimmy G and his injury history, you already knew that there was going to be a time when somebody was going to have to be under center, not named Jimmy Garoppolo. So here we are.
I was going to ask you about this because I watch this team and I go, what is it that they're trying to do? And it's hard to find the answers. Who do they want to be? What kind of team do they want to be? They were a team that ran the ball really effectively last year. They are one of the 2 or 3 worst running teams in the league this year. Somehow, Josh Jacobs goes from leading the league in rushing to they can't do anything on the ground. And the passing game, like the personnel seems ill-suited for the quarterback. It just kind of seems like a mess right now, Q. And I do wonder if this game were in week 10, would we be having a different discussion about Aiden O'Connell and Jimmy G? And if they were 2-8, I think we would, right? But like, it's still too early. Plus, Josh McDaniels has got to win, presumably. What is the pressure on him right now to win in Las Vegas?
It's funny. I don't really think that there's a ton of pressure, and I know that sounds odd and bizarre. I really do believe that he's going to get another year. Him and Dave Ziegler, the GM, have come in together. I do think that they get another year, unless everything falls off the rails. Now, if everything just falls off the rails and it goes completely to, hell in a handbasket, then okay, then who knows, right? I mean, then all bets are off. But I think if the team stays together, he doesn't lose the locker room, all of a sudden there's not a bunch of revolts, and there could be, then I think that he'll be fine. Even though, Raider Nation is ready to fire him last year, right? They've been ready to move on from Josh McDaniels, and it's understandable, right? Winning and not winning sucks, right? Not winning is terrible, and it's just not what anybody in the fan base wants. So I understand the frustrations, but I think that Mark Davis is committed to seeing this, this staff and their plan, whatever that plan is, and I'm not privy to that plan, but whatever the plan is, he's committed to seeing it through. And again, it builds up the frustrations because you look on paper. And Peter, we talked when the Raiders went and made the move for Devontae Adams. It's going to be one of the best teams in the AFC West. They're going to compete with the Chiefs. It's going to be such a competitive division. And it wasn't, right? And then all of a sudden, you hear the frustration for Devontae. You've covered him for a long time. He's honest. He's brutally honest. He's a hell of a player, and he wants to win. So, that he's keeping it real. He's as advertised. He's a fantastic player. But, there's frustration. So it's really strange right now to see what stage of this plan that they're in. And again, when you bring in Jimmy Garoppolo with all his injury history, that there could be hiccups along the way. And he already had a concussion in week 3. So, I mean, there's that. And so it's a bizarre time, to say the least, Peter. And it's tough days for Raider Nation. And believe me, man, they are on edge right now. So we try to talk them off the ledge, to say the least. But I'm sure there's a lot of questions.
What a coach is facing internally is not always the same as what a coach is facing externally. Fans are going to be one thing. Management is often a very different thing. And I think, especially from people who are not in it day-to-day like you are, Mark Davis is a different kind of owner, for good and for ill. And so does he want to pay Josh McDaniels and another coach? That's got to be factored in here. If you're a Raiders fan, you're going, get this guy out of here. Maybe, I don't know, maybe, but some people probably are.
Oh yeah.
What I think is poignant for Packer fans is this was one of the guys, if not the guy, Aaron Rodgers wanted to replace Mike McCarthy.
Yeah.
And to see how his career has gone since that moment, since that inflection point when the Packers chose Matt LaFleur. It's easy to say, okay, Matt LaFleur's won a bunch of games. It's a different situation when you have Aaron Rodgers, Josh McDaniels with Aaron Rodgers versus Josh McDaniels with Aiden O'Connell or Tim Tebow or Kyle Orton. It could look very different. And that's one of those, I think, really underrated storylines as we come into this week is like, this is a dueling banjos version of the timeline. It could be one version over here and one version over here. I want to ask you about Devontae Adams too, as a storyline, because he got hurt last week. It seems like he's trending toward playing. What is his status as we head toward trying to talk about the matchups here?
So far, it looks pretty good. I mean, he returned to that game after banging up his shoulder, and I thought he was done for the game. I thought, okay, that's a wrap. 17 is out. He's just too good of a player to even try to get him back out there. But he showed his resiliency, that the fact that he's a warrior, the fact that he wants to be out there and be a leader for the team, and came back and made some big-time plays and catches down the stretch for Aiden O'Connell. So I think that he's going to be fine. He did say after the game on Sunday that, yeah, my shoulder hurts really bad, but, I'm going to be out there. And so I think that he will be there. I'm sure that throughout the course of the week with practice, and really we'll get back out there on the practice field and see what they have to do, later on this week, as, since the game's not till Monday, they've pushed everything back a day. I'm sure that they're going to limit him and bring him along slowly, but Davante Adams doesn't need a whole lot of practice to go out there and perform on Monday night at Allegiant Stadium. So, I mean, I think he's going to be fine, but obviously it's something to monitor, because so far this season, it's been the Davante Adams and Jacoby Myers show, along with Josh Jacobs sprinkled in there in the passing game, and that's it. It hasn't been anybody else. And so, that's something to consider when you start thinking about the matchups that we'll talk about in segment number 2. But real quick, I'm assuming coming off that Thursday night football loss where Jordan Love was basically on his back the whole game, and that was Matt LaFleur's words, not mine. He can't throw the ball from his back. He was pretty upset about that. There's got to be some maybe anxiety around Packer fans as far as what this team is doing, especially with the offensive line looking like it looks so far.
Yeah, and more so because Packer fans are just not used to seeing offensive line play like that. They're just not. And so you have Royce Newman in there for Elton Jenkins. Elton Jenkins has been on the practice field coming back from that MCL. Apparently, it is just a pain tolerance issue. So if he's practicing, I guess that is a good sign for him to go. That takes your worst offensive lineman by far off the field. John Runyon Jr. not practicing though. So that's your other guard. If you have to take him off the field, do they put Royce Newman in? Do they take the UCLA kid, Sean Ryan, who was a draft pick a year ago? Does he go in? That is who I've been advocating for. I have seen enough Royce Newman. It's too much. Any amount right now is too much. And Zach Tom appears to be progressing. So I think they're going to be in a good position. But you still got to block Max Crosby, and that is no small feat. So I know Patrick Graham, as a defensive coordinator, likes to mix and match what he wants to do, but he's probably not going to do what someone like Brian Flores does and just heat Jordan Love up. I don't expect them to bring pressure on 60% of snaps or anything like that. But who knows? That's part of being a defensive coordinator, is you get to be a chameleon, and 1 week do one thing and 1 week do another.
So there was part 1 of our conversation right there, talking about the biggest storylines for both the Packers and the Raiders in this Monday Night Football matchup. It's going to close out week 5 of the NFL season. It's crazy to think we're already at week 5, but here it is, and it's already this Raiders' second primetime game. We know how the first one went against Pittsburgh. Here's the next one against the Green Bay Packers coming up on Monday. Coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast, we'll talk about the main matchups, what you should be looking for, what matchups you should be looking for from the Packers and the Raiders and the Packers. Both sides of it will come up in segment number 2, and we'll get right into it after I tell you about the title sponsor, which is PrizePicks. And PrizePicks is the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They're the easiest and most exciting way to play fantasy football. Or fantasy sports in general. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, pros, sharks, it's real simple. You pick more or less than 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. And you can select 6 players or 3 players or 4 players, whatever the case may be, from Monday night's game. Packers and Raiders, whatever you want to do. Davante Adams, Jair Alexander, Jordan Love, Jimmy Garoppolo, Aiden O'Connell, whoever the quarterback's going to be, any of that. And all you do is go up against the projections. It's that simple. A lot of folks have had the most fun ever playing with PrizePicks. You can win 25 times your money during the football season. Again, just select 2 or more players, pick more or less their projected stats, and place your entry. And it's happened so quickly. You could place your entry in less than 60 seconds. My guy, Peter Bukowski, he does it quick, fast, and in a hurry. Matter of fact, while we were doing all things, the show, when we were doing the crossover edition, he actually was putting his projections in. I was like, dang, what are you doing? He's like, I just put a quick projection in. So he did it that fast, and you can do it that fast as well. All you need to do is go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Again, use the code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the promo code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to jump into part 2 of the crossover edition. Myself and Peter Bukowski, we talked all things storylines in segment number 1. Now it's time to talk about the key matchups on both sides of the ball for the Packers and for the Raiders. So things start off in segment number 2, in part 2 of the conversation, with me asking about the main matchup, the one that's most important for the Packers.
It's the same, and maybe it's in my head after what happened in Detroit, but winning at the line of scrimmage is essential. And I know that in the modern NFL, everyone wants to talk about the passing game and get in the gun and let Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes sling the rock all over the yard, and that's the most fun version of the offense that we see. But look at what has happened over the years with the Bills when they can't run the ball in the postseason.
Right.
Look at what is happening in the postseason to a team like the Chiefs when they can't block. You have to be able to protect your quarterback, and you have to be able to open up some lanes in the run game. The Packers have been atrocious stopping the run this season, and the Raiders have been terrible running the ball. This is the old movable force against the stoppable object.
Yes.
And that it's a pillow fight, Q. Like, it's going to be wild to see how this works. Packer fans are sure Josh Jacobs is going to run for 300 yards in this game, because that's just the way that it seems like they have been conditioned. But the flip side of this, and I wrote about this over at The Leap, which is my newsletter, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. And that is that this is the kind of team that the Packers can get off the schneid a little bit against, because they're not a great run defense. When you look at the names, I think that there are some players that I like. Max Crosby, obviously the headliner there. I've always liked Divine Diablo as a player. Just play him at linebacker. Let's do it. Like, I love that willingness to try some stuff. But I think you can run the ball against this front, and we've seen it. They've been a below average run defense so far this season. So I think that's key for Green Bay. Can they get the run going, and can they stop the run against a team that has been the worst running offense in the league so far, one of them, but was really, really good last year. So is Joe Barry going to turn this rushing offense back into what we saw last year? That is certainly the fear if you're a Packer fan.
It's so funny, Peter, because I could hold up a mirror right now and just point it at you, because I mean, honestly, that's what it's all about, right? I mean, it's the trenches, it's the offensive line. The Raiders have given up 11 sacks in the last 2 games, right? The Steelers had 4 on Sunday Night Football in primetime action, and then Khalil Mack and the Chargers got off on Sunday.
Yeah, Khalil Mack on his own. I think he just sacked Aiden O'Connell again. In fact, I'm getting word.
He sacked me on accident, right? He just because, what the hell, why not? But yeah, man, I mean, they had 7 sacks on Sunday, and that's just way too much, obviously. So the offensive line's got to figure out a way to shore that up. And you're right about the run game. The run game hasn't been there for the Raiders. And look, Josh Jacobs led the league in rushing last season. But the one thing about it is he really didn't get started last season till around week 4. Week 4, week 5, that's when everything really started cooking. And, I know that against the Chargers, he wasn't great when it came to the run game. He did a lot of his damage through the passing game. But to me, he looked like a guy that was in shape now. Remember, he missed all the training camp. He missed all the preseason. He was holding out for the contract situation. He started to look like he was that Josh Jacobs guy, running downhill, running with a purpose, running through defenders, kind of having a little extra chip on his shoulder, a little extra edge to him. So I'm hoping, and this is just me hoping, that he's getting to be that guy again. And again, it took a while before the run game got going out. The right side of that offensive line is where my big concerns are. The right guard, Greg Van Roten, right now, he's a guy that
Packers legend, Greg Van Roten, by the way.
There you go. See, I even forgot to acknowledge that part. But yeah, Lincoln Kennedy continues to tell me each and every week he plays too high. Right, he's way up too high, and he allows guys to get underneath his pads. So that's the part of the right guard position that he's having problems with. And Jermaine Illuminor has been the right tackle, and I think he's a swing tackle at best. I don't think he should be a starting right tackle, but I don't know what the solution is at that right tackle spot. It's been a problem for the Raiders for a long time. So, they've got to shore that up, figure out how to get things going. They've got to protect whatever quarterback is out there, Jimmy G or Aiden O'Connell, and they got to get the run game going. The offense is not set up for the quarterback to throw the ball 45 times, or in Aiden O'Connell's, his situation on Sunday, he threw the ball 39 times. That's too much. They've got to have a balanced offense, and if they can get that going, they'll have a chance, especially, as you mentioned, against the Packers defense that's not very good. I mean, I feel like both teams could have an opportunity to get right, and neither team wants to be that get-right team. Right? No. I mean, no one wants to be the slump buster, right? Nobody wants, and I always describe it like this. No one wants to be that 2 a.m. phone call, right? Hey, what are you doing? Nothing. All right, cool. You want to give up 200 yards on the ground? Sure, let's do it, right? I mean, nobody wants to be that.
I've had enough Coors Light for that. Let's do it. The thing that I was looking at with this team as I was, trying to break down the matchups and all that stuff is the offensive line, the way that it was built. You look at the guys, you mentioned the right side of that offensive line. The left side, you've got Colton Miller, who's a nice player. I don't know that he's worth the money that they gave him, but he's a nice player. And then Dylan Parham is a 3rd-round pick from 2022. Still plenty of book to be written with him.
Sure.
But then center, right guard, right tackle, you're talking about scrap heap kind of players. Just like, let's try and put something together. Well, you go back to 2018, they took Colton Miller in the first round. They took Brandon Parker in the third round. Brandon Parker, not a thing in Las Vegas.
No.
You fast forward 2021, they take Alex Leatherwood in the first round. Is Alex Leatherwood still in the NFL? Q, do you know?
I think that he got waived from Chicago. I think he's on someone's practice squad. I don't know, but yeah,
I believe he's on a team right now, but that is a disaster that he can't on a team that desperately right now, 2 years ago, he's a draft pick. On a team that desperately needs offensive line, and especially the kind of offensive line he could theoretically provide with the size, the power that he plays with. All the inconsistencies aside, there's a reason he's like a borderline NFL player, right?
Right.
But what they thought he could be, you can't miss those opportunities.
No.
And that is, it's just, I think, a great example. And Raiders fans are probably sick of hearing about this because of what happened with that what was it, the 19 draft, where you have 3 first-round picks and you come out with like
Josh Jacobs,
one guy.
That's
Jonathan,
it. Jonathan
Abrams, speaking of borderline NFL guy, Jonathan Abrams.
Yep.
And now if you took Hunter Renfrow and Max Crosby in the first round, like, now you'd kind of look like a genius for doing that. So they still end up having, weirdly enough, a decent class, but still you just can't take the collar in the first round, basically. And so that I think is really damning. And I think it's a good reminder for Packers fans, frankly, that what they do with offensive linemen, you just pull Zach Tom out of the deep recesses of your third round. Like, that doesn't other teams don't do that. Rasheed Walker in the 7th round does not come in for every team and play really well. He's done that. He's come in and played really well. Teams don't do that. And I think it's easy for Packers fans. And I have to remind myself, because I'm so deeply embedded in this team. Like, this is not normal. What they do is not normal. And these other teams are trying to figure this out. I don't know how Green Bay does it. If I had an answer for you, I'd be selling it to other teams, frankly, because they'd pay me a lot of money. They'd pay me a lot of money to give them the secret if there was one.
Right. The secret sauce to fixing the offensive lines, right? I mean, that would be awesome. And like you mentioned, Dylan Parham, he was the 3rd round pick. He was Dave Ziegler's first pick as a GM of the Silver and Black. And I think he's a good player. I want to say he may have regressed a little bit this year as opposed to his rookie year. And then Thayer Munford was the 7th round pick. Like you're talking about 7th round picks, right tackle out of Ohio State. And he's been good. He comes into the jumbo package. He's a guy that you'll see out there on Monday, number 77. You won't be able to miss him, but he's just not out there consistently. I think that he's going to be the right tackle of the future. I think that that's what they ultimately want him to be, but he's just not ready to be there consistently every play. So, you know, they've been exposed by edge rushers and defensive linemen the last 2 weeks. You know, and I know that a guy like Gary can get after the quarterback. I know that he, pins his ears back and goes. And so, Jermaine Illuminor is going to have his work cut out for him. Van Roten's going to have his work cut out for him. Andre James is going to have his work cut out for him. They all have to really step up. But really the key matchups, I think, really for this game is going to be in the trenches. I know Green Bay is dealing with a bunch of injuries as well. So I think that it's like almost default going to the trenches on Monday.
And like, we're broken records on this, but this is still how this works. And I think especially when you come off a game for the Packers where you give up more than 40% of your dropbacks result in a pressure. Right. It was the worst pressure that Jordan Love has been under since that Chiefs game in his NFL debut when Steve Spagnuolo was just devious with some of the zero pressures that he's running and all that stuff. So like, and then Khalil Mack has 6 sacks against this Raiders team.
Right.
And you give up 150 yards rushing. Like, the Packers did the same thing. And so they're both, to your point, they're like, they're the Spider-Man meme kind of pointing at each other a little bit right now, because it's like, we got to figure this out, but they got to figure this out. Right. And we got to figure this other side of the ball out, but they're still trying to figure it out too. So if one of these guys can figure it out, they might have a chance to get that 2 a.m. phone call, and no better place to get that 2 a.m. phone call than Vegas too.
So there you go. Part 2 of the crossover edition, talking all things matchups. So we got storylines in the books. We've got matchups in the books. So what is the path to victory? That's what we'll get for you coming up in segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast, the crossover edition. We'll get right to that after we tell you about a couple great sponsors here of the show. And the first one is FanDuel. You need to snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. Right now, New customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. It's that simple. $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you're thinking about joining FanDuel, good. Right now is no better time to get in on the action. And the app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and a whole lot more. And the show that I do with Lee Sterling, Locked On Bets, we use the player props all the time. So much fun. Really helps you get, even more invested in the game. So I definitely encourage you to check it out. FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Kick off the NFL season the right way. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. I also want to let you know that today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast is brought to you by BetterHelp. And sometimes, Raider Nation, life happens. And I mean life that's way bigger than, football and wins and losses in the game. I'm talking about real deal life. Sometimes it's got to do with your kids. Sometimes it's got to do with yourself. Sometimes it can be simple but still stressful, like a job. A decision on, do you want to stay here? Do you want to go to another job? Do you want to take a job offer? Do you want to quit this job? Whatever. Maybe it's a relationship. Maybe that girlfriend or boyfriend is just working your last nerve and you just can't decide if you need to make a change or stick it out. Whatever the case may be, sometimes it's just stressful and you just need a little bit of reassurance. You need someone to talk to. You need someone to break it down with. You need someone just to hear you out. Well, that's where BetterHelp could come in. Again, because sometimes life just hits you and you have no idea what's going on. So you need sometimes to get your brain right? So if you've ever been thinking about therapy, then maybe you should give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you got to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched up with a licensed therapist, and so you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. So if you're just not feeling that therapist and you're like, yeah, you know what, maybe I need to try someone else that maybe fits my personality a little better, you can. Make your brain your friend with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp.com/LockedOn. Again, for the folks in the back row, BetterHelp.com/LockedOn. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast and part 3 of the crossover edition. Peter Bukowski and myself, we've talked all things storylines in Monday Night Football's game. We've talked all things matchups in Monday Night Football games. So what's the path to victory? What is it going to take for the Raiders to come away with the victory? What is it going to take for the Packers to come away with the victory? If the Packers win, they improve to 3-2 overall. If the Raiders win, they improve to 2-3 overall. If they drop, well, then it's another conversation. Then there's some trouble. The Raiders would be sitting there at 1-4 on the season. That is where nobody wants to be, and the Packers would be below 500, sitting there at 2-3. So let's go ahead and jump into part 3 of the conversation. Starts off with me asking what the Packers have to do to have a chance to win this game Monday night at Allegiant Stadium.
Stop the run. I think that's it. If they can stop the run, this Raiders offense becomes one-dimensional, and it happens to be the kind of dimension that the Packers are designed to stop. I hope, Q, we're 24 and a half minutes into this show. We have not talked about Devontae Adams versus Jair Alexander. I hope both those guys coming in with injuries. I hope we get that matchup, because you're talking about two of the best in the game, a heavyweight bout, and two guys who really, really respect one another. This is not Marshawn Lattimore versus Mike Evans, where the guys don't like each other. I'm always interested in a matchup like this, where these guys absolutely love to go at it and battle. I think Devontae is, if he's healthy, equipped to win some of these matchups. He's so good at the catch point, but then it depends on who's throwing him the ball. So I think this pass rush can get off if you're the Packers. I think your secondary can match up with these receivers. I like Russell Douglas against Jacoby Myers as a matchup. And then, of course, you have Jair. So this is all about the run defense to me. If the Packers can stop the run, to me, it's just going to be so hard for this Raiders team to score. And I think that gives the Packers the best chance to score enough points. Not that they're going to score 40 or 70. Geez, Dolphins, relax. And I think that you can win a sort of like a 21-17 kind of game, a 24-17 kind of game. I like the Packers, not comfortably, but I just think the Packers are a better team. Christian Watson hopefully getting closer to full health, Aaron Jones closer to full health, Rashawn Gary closer to full health. I think that makes a huge difference for this team. Those three players are really, really good. And I just haven't seen, maybe I'll just ask you the question. What do the Raiders do well, Q?
I mean,
their kicker's really good.
I think that's the question that they're asking. I think they're asking that right now, right? I mean, they're trying to figure out what they do really well. And that's the problem when you're already 4 games into the season. I mean, their kicking game is great, right? I mean, Daniel Carlson's fantastic. AJ Cole's fantastic, but you don't want to be that. Well, the special teams is the best unit of the team. And right now they're fantastic, but the run game hasn't got going at all. Max Crosby, number 98, you can see him early and often. He's a guy that's going to give you maximum effort. There's a reason why his name is Max with 2 X's. I mean, he brings it every single down, every single snap. I mean, he's that guy. So, I mean, it's funny that you mentioned stop the run. The Raiders have to establish the run. They haven't got it going at all, right? And Josh Jacobs is starting to round into form, I do believe. So I think that they are going to try to be a balanced offense. I think that they're going to try to run Jacobs early and often and also get him some of the dump offs like you saw against the Chargers, because those are just extended runs. That's fine. If he picks up 8 or 9 yards a catch, that's cool, right? Go ahead and do that. That's fine. I'll take that every day of the week and twice on Sunday. And I think that the Raiders would be happy with that as well, because it keeps Josh Jacobs involved in the game. And that's something that's very important. You mentioned Devontae and Jair. Those are 2 of the best in the business. I mean, that'll be just fun. That'll be get your popcorn and watch it go. Because that's exciting. And hopefully, like you mentioned, both those guys are as healthy as possible to go out there and compete against each other. That'll be something to pay attention to. But for me, man, it's run the ball, and that pass rush has got to affect Jordan Love. I mean, the Packers offensive line is leaky, right? We saw them on Thursday Night Football. Matt LaFleur was angry, to say it nicely, after the game, right? Let it be known.
He does not normally get like that, but he was feisty, bro.
He was feisty. I mean, that's a BS question. I mean, if I knew the answer to that, it wouldn't have happened. I mean, he was hot, and he's had some time, right?
I liked it.
Yeah, me too. It was almost like an extra bye week that the Packers had going from Thursday Night Football to Monday Night Football. They get extra time to get things figured out. But Jordan Love's still a young starter. So, Max Crosby is going to bring everything he's got. My big question I have each and every week is, who's going to complement Max? Who is it going to be across from him, right? Is it going to be Tyree Wilson, the rookie? He hasn't really got started yet, but you can see him getting a little bit better, getting his legs under him. Is it a guy like Malcolm Kuntz, right? Is it going to be someone from the interior? Who is going to harass Jordan Love that's not named Max Crosby is the big question. But everything becomes easier for that defense, and they did really good. They shut out the Chargers in the second half last week. So if they could build off that defense, they'll have themselves a chance. But everything is easier, man, when they get pressure on the quarterback. The rest of the linebackers, the secondary, the safeties, all of a sudden things can happen. So as far as I'm concerned, you've got to be able to run the ball, establish that, have that balanced offense, and you've got to get to Jordan Love early, and you've got to get to Jordan Love often. That's the way that the Raiders win the game on Sunday. And it's funny or Monday. I mean, and the funny thing about it is, you mentioned 24-17 or 20-17. The Raiders haven't scored over 20 points yet this season. 17, 10, 18, 17. That's it. Yeah. And I thought the offense was going to be the strength of this team. So there's that. The second and third quarter, they haven't even scored a touchdown in the second or third quarter yet this season. They've scored 9 total points.
And the Packers are one of the best third quarter teams in the league. Jordan Love has been a different guy in the third quarter. So glad you brought up Max Crosby, because he's going to be going up against Rasheed Walker when he's lined up over the left tackle. I think you're going to see the Raiders take a page out of the Lions playbook and say, we're going to take Max Crosby and treat him like Aiden Hutchinson against the Packers. We're going to line him up everywhere. You better account for where our guy is. And if you don't, he's going to beat your backup guard. If you have to play a backup guard, he's going to beat. You better account for 98 or you're going to have a problem. I can't wait, Q. This is going to be a great time. And this is, I wish I could say that these 2 teams were going to match up in Las Vegas in February. I don't think that's going to happen.
So there it was, Raider Nation, the crossover edition. Peter Bukowski and myself, again, good friend of the show. Peter Bukowski, I always appreciate chopping it up with him. He's been a part of the show many times. If it was talking about Devontae Adams and the possibility of him becoming a Raider, Aaron Rodgers while he was still a member of the Packers, Peter is a great dude, right? He's one of my favorite guys to chop it up with, so it was really a lot of fun being able to talk with him and, share the show with him like we did. So hopefully you appreciated that as well. Again, he does a great job. Locked On Packers. And if you want to learn more about the Packers, definitely check out his show so you can just hear more about the Packers, kind of get a little bit more insight on to what to expect to see Monday Night Football Raiders, and Packers. We'll be back tomorrow. We're going to meet with Josh McDaniels and a little bit later on this morning, about 10 o'clock at the Intermountain Health Performance Center. So if there's anything really good from that, we should learn about the quarterback situation. Jimmy G, is he cleared concussion protocol? Is Aiden O'Connell getting snaps? Like, we'll have a lot of questions to ask Coach McDaniels. So whatever we get from that, we'll bring to the table. News and notes, of course. We'll have calls and texts. We'll get back to that off the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line at 707-654-4693. We'll have plenty of conversation. And remember, we won't have keys to victory yet until Monday's show because it's Monday Night Football. So there's that. So just remember that we'll have an extra show to talk about this upcoming game, Week 5 NFL action. So until tomorrow, Raider Nation, as we close out the week really strong and send you into the weekend the right way, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.